We're so proud to have Andrew Yang on our American Promise National Advisory Council and to have him here today. So,
thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here. Let's give Jeff and his entire team a huge round of applause. All the work that they do. So one of the things that gets omitted from my bio a lot is that I started and ran a nonprofit for 6.5 years. So when I'm in environments like this, I feel very deeply the role of the founder, the executive director, the team. Nonprofits run on passion, but you know what else they run on? Money. So one of the constraints you have as the head of a nonprofit is that you're always running this dance with the people that support you. Someone gives you money, you're like incredibly grateful, and you paint a picture about what you can do. I'm going to go a little bit harder on, which is we need to make sure that American Promise has the resource that needs to take its mission to more states. Am I right? Right now, American Promise is running a budget of, let's call it between $1 and $1.5 million. I think they've done an incredible amount with that level of resources. It's astounding. They've been punching above their weight class for a long time. But the truth is, sometimes you need to gain a little weight, to gain a little muscle mass. So with the extent of those of you who are in this room as donors, please do dig deep. Think about what you can give to this organization, because I guarantee this is some of the absolute best investment that any of us can make. And Jessica talked about this as a path to potentially improving social outcomes. She's right on so many dimensions, on so many levels, and that's what drew me to run for president in 2020. And you all remember when I showed up on your TV screen as part of one of the debates, you thought, this is new. You then Googled me, being like, Andrew Yang, universal basic income. But I'll retrace my steps a little bit, because I think it speaks to my journey here and also the nature of this movement. So my parents immigrated to this country from Taiwan. They met in grad school at UC Berkeley. Look at that. That was unexpected. looks like Peter's a Cal grad. So my dad got his PhD in physics. He went on to generate 69 US patents for GE and IBM. My mother got a master's in math and statistics. So I was a very, very nerdy kid. I played Dungeons & Dragons. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to think everyone's dad had a PhD because my dad had a PhD. So I would say like, what's your dad's PhD? And then they would respond, here's what his PhD is in. I was like, oh, what did I say? So the message I got as a child of immigrants was get good grades, get a good job, try and make my place in American life. And so for me, I went to college and then law school, spent 5 unhappy months as a lawyer, and then became an entrepreneur, working in education initially, sold a company in 2009, and my career took its left turn when I started that nonprofit. The nonprofit was called Venture for America. How many of you have heard of Venture for America? If you haven't, it's totally cool. If you have, thank you for that. Makes me very happy. So Venture for America is like a Teach for America for entrepreneurship and startups. We enlisted recent college graduates to go work on growth companies in Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, New Orleans, Birmingham, other cities around the country. What do you all think? Does that sound like a wholesome mission? Pretty wholesome, right? So during that time, I got to meet the president a couple times. I got to bring my wife, so my in-laws were excited about me that week. And I traveled the Midwest and the South, seeing a bunch of parts of the country I hadn't seen before. And in a lot of environments, things were not going that well. Like the water level seemed like it was going down, not up. And then Trump won and became our president in 2016. You all remember that evening. And I saw that and said, wow, like we're really coming apart, like much faster than even I'd thought. And I believed I had some insight because I had spent all that time in the Midwest and the South, and also had many friends in Silicon Valley who were talking about the accelerating automation of the economy, that AI was going to come online and do a lot of jobs that a lot of Americans presently do. So that's what prompted me to run for president, and I will confess to you all, I did not actually think I was going to win. When reporters ask me, it's like, are you serious? Then it's a trap, like many other reporter questions, because if you say like yes, then you're crazy, and if you say no, then you're also crazy. So you have to say something graceful, like there are multiple versions of victory. Like there are different ways we can win. Like, so sort of showing you have a grasp on reality, but also showing that you're trying to do something meaningful. So ran for president. As Jeff said, made 7 debates, raised $40 million from almost 500,000 everyday Americans. And that's the thing that made me the most proud, is that everyday Americans saw in my campaign a hope for a better future. And that was true across any geographic, racial, class lines. I mean, there was a waitress in Iowa who came to me and said, thank you, because she sensed I was on her side. But when I came off the trail in 2020, unfortunately, I still had a negative feeling about the way our politics were progressing. I didn't think like, oh, we're on a great path. And so when I dug into the reasons why I felt like we were stuck, I concluded that we're stuck by design, that we're living through some very, very poor design choices that were made 160 years ago or so, in terms of this two-party system that now is inflaming and polarizing us in ways that are nearly unprecedented, where today almost half of Democrats view Republicans as morally corrupt and a threat to the country, and shocker, half of Republicans feel the same way about Democrats. And unfortunately, that's going to get worse, not better, because of the media incentives and the social media pouring gasoline on the whole thing. That when most Americans, that like the thousands I met on the trail, when they think just like, oh, why are things going so poorly in the town we're in right now, Washington, what they don't realize is that all of the incentives now are to push people into corners and not come together and get something done. A senator actually said to me, and this was a very, very powerful statement that I want you all to reflect on for a moment. She said, an issue is worth more to us unaddressed than addressed. And think about what that means. What she was saying was that if we don't solve the problem, then we can get people upset about it, we can raise money, we can raise energy. If we lead across the aisle to try and solve the problem, what happens? They get punished by their base. And make no mistake, it's all about trying to keep the base off of their backs to stay in office. What is the approval rating of the U.S. Congress as we're here together right now? I'm anchoring you low. Someone said 8. That's a little too low. It's between 20 and 28%. What is the re-election rate for individual members of Congress? 94%. How many of you run a business? All right, if you run a business and 3 out of 4 of your customers are upset and you change absolutely nothing, like what happens over time? You know what I mean? They'll start looking for any answer, any recourse. And unfortunately, there is no pressure release built into our system. The reason why the re-election rate is so astoundingly high is because about 90% of our congressional districts are now uncompetitive in the general election. We've been gerrymandered so furiously that now the only way I can lose if I'm a legislator is to get primaried from within my own party. So think about that incentive system. How do I avoid getting primaried? Just try and keep the most extreme, rabid hyper-partisans off my back, which will make reasonable people seem unreasonable really quickly. We've disincentivized reasonableness. We've disincentivized compromise. We've disincentivized people coming together. And then the average American's wondering where it went wrong. So that is the system that we're currently here to fix. And when I say here to fix, it's one reason why it's a joy to be among you all, because there's this tribe of Americans that are trying to fix it. The average American just knows things are going wrong, but doesn't know what the pathway out is. We have to build a path to a point where it reaches enough of them that it clicks and they say, oh, like that's why I feel this way. This is the journey I went through from the 2020 when I was writing my book. And then when I left the Democratic Party the following year, I was stunned by the energy and animus that was directed at me. Like, I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. I was like, hey, guys, leaving the party to try and get ranked choice voting and nonpartisan open primaries. And instead, I was like, I joked with someone afterwards. I was like, wow, the Democratic Party, a party of deep introspection. Because instead, I was assailed as something, that frankly, it didn't seem to resemble. And literally, I was like, guys, I was a Democrat for decades. Like, I'm like a wholesome, human. It's like, it doesn't mean you leave the Democratic Party like that. You all of a sudden have these like nefarious purposes. And the thing that makes me so proud to be here is that you all are just doing what you're doing because you feel it's the right thing to do for the country. No one's doing this for some desire for accolades or power or influence or monetary rewards. You know what I mean? Like, look around this room tonight. Like, why are you all here? It's because you know that you're building something the country badly, badly needs. There are different pieces to this puzzle. American Promises constitutional amendment is an enormous piece of the puzzle. I got to say, even among my crowd, like, a lot of people think that constitutional amendments are out of reach. The Forward Party, this new third party, which, by the way, is already the third biggest party in the country by resources, less than a year after inception. That's generally an applause line, but it's cool. Some of the organizations that were cited here, Fair Vote, ranked choice voting, nonpartisan open primaries, we're already seeing the impact in Alaska. There are different pieces to this puzzle, but the movement is really the same. The movement of pragmatic problem solvers who want to try and fix the incentives of our politics and our media so that people who do the right thing actually get rewarded and don't have to walk through fire to do so. I was just talking to Mike Koenig up here, and he and I were discussing some of the folks that have left the major parties to join this movement, and many of them made an economic sacrifice. Like, it was hard for them. A lot of them see it as a one-way street, because if you step out of the two-party system, all of a sudden, all of the ways in which people trade favors and jobs and cash, all of a sudden you're cutting yourself off from that. And it's one reason why everyone who joins on a staff level, it's worth their weight in gold, because they're leading with conviction in the most real way you can, by taking action, having genuine personal sacrifice, and digging deep. And it makes me want to work harder. It makes me think, wow, I have to make sure that they made the right decision, because now their families rely upon it. There are people in this organization, maybe it's not that dramatic because you all are very likable and the rest of it, but there are people here in this organization, I guarantee, walked away from much better paying jobs and, and the like, to do what they do. Seeing the commitment and the sacrifice that people make every day for this, it's energizing, it's invigorating, and I will say that this is a time in American history where incredible things are now possible, or on the table. Some of those things, I gotta be honest, are not great. There's some not great things that are on the table. What we have to do is work like hell so that some great positive things are on the table too. Am I right? When I was running for president, I talked about how my father grew up on a dirt farm in Taiwan. No, they didn't farm dirt. It was a farm with a dirt floor. And I saw his childhood home as a teenager, and I was like, I cannot believe you grew up in this. But it gave me a different perspective. I was like, wow, I should appreciate this country. I love America, and everything it's given to me and my family. I'm now a dad. I've got a 9 and 7-year-old. And I want to leave this country in a condition that I'll be proud, that I'll say, look, this country gave so much to me and your brother, your uncle, my brother, and it's still here for you too. That's what this movement's about. This movement's about what we're going to leave for our kids and the next generation of Americans. So let's make sure we leave it all out on the field. And if democracy fails, it's not going to be because we did not dig deep enough. Am I right? So what digging deep means, it means different things for different people in this room. If you're a volunteer, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just keep volunteering and grinding and doing what you do, even when other people don't seem to notice or appreciate it. And if digging deep means cutting that check to American Promise, then you should definitely do that too. Thank you all very, very much.